This series contains adult language and includes content that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. From Murder Creek Media, this is Skeptical. I'm your host, Neeli Faulkner. This is Season 1, Episode 9. If you're just now tuning into Skeptical, this is one story told week by week. So if you haven't listened to our episodes in sequential order, go back to Episode 1 and start from the beginning. Last week on Skeptical.
And when I went in there, I remember it being some men, and they asked me questions. But I'm telling you, I have no reason to lie. I just remember kind of feeling like, you better do what these people want you to do, or your ass ain't gonna get out of here. And I remember her telling me the story of a man that killed his wife, and they knew that he was guilty, but they couldn't prove it, and they needed this dose to shut him up. I swear to God, and I'm not lying.
I wish I could truly capture the surge of emotions I felt after speaking with Amy. Excitement, relief, maybe a cautious hope. None of those words felt quite right. What I knew for sure was that I left our meeting with a notarized affidavit in hand, the second one from a witness recanting their initial statement in this case. These weren't just small missteps. They were lies that had been used in Daniel's trial and ultimately contributed to his conviction. On July 6, 2018, the Coosa County News ran a front-page story about Skeptical. While Amy's recantation would eventually become a significant breakthrough, the headline in the local paper was something else entirely. That single article thrust the case of Mike Bernasa's murder and Daniel's controversial conviction back into the spotlight of a community that had all but forgotten about it. For years, Daniel's conviction had been a closed chapter in the town's collective memory, stored away under decades of small-town gossip and fading recollections. But now, with Skeptical gaining momentum and reaching new audiences, the case was front and center again. It stirred conversations in living rooms and coffee shops, in back rooms, and even over kitchen tables. And that's when the calls began. At first, they came from people I'd already spoken with, individuals who now had more to say. Maybe they felt safer as the community began to rally around the case, or perhaps a story in the paper triggered something. Then there were the unexpected calls, people I hadn't reached out to yet, friends, neighbors, and even those who stayed silent back in 1995. Some were driven by guilt, others by curiosity, but they all had one thing in common. They were ready to talk. I followed every lead, every hesitant tip that hinted at another rabbit hole. Many of these conversations brought to light doubts, gaps, and inconsistencies in old statements, which is to be expected, I guess. We know memories shift over time, but some of what I heard left me with more questions. Amy's statement and her affidavit shoved a flurry of new information in my brain and left me trying to organize what I thought I knew. I decided to pause, take a step back, and start trying to verify information from those that had actually testified against Daniel or Tony. Because, after all, their words were the cause of his conviction, not someone like Amy whose statements were never heard by a jury. And that's how I found myself searching for Timothy Marshall. If you paid attention in previous episodes, you'll recognize Timothy's name. During Daniel's trial, Timothy had hinted that parts of his official statement weren't accurate. In fact, he outright claimed he hadn't said certain things attributed to him. But the judge overruled his objections, insisting he testify to the statement as it was documented. At the time I first read the trial transcripts, I remember thinking how odd that was, a witness being forced to stand by words he claimed weren't his own. It was a detail that really stuck with me, and I knew I had to find Timothy to ask him about it. A few months later, I was finally able to reach Timothy through a friend, Kim, who had begun helping me to reach some of the people who were involved in the case. Kim is one of those people I referred to when I said the Coosa County News article stirred up some interest in the case, because she knew the area well and some of the people I had named. Eventually, Kim became a good friend of mine and is probably the only other person not directly involved in the case that can tell you all about it. Without her, I never would have gathered the information I had that trickled on into a courtroom years later. In the audio you're about to hear, Kim is sitting down with Timothy Marshall discussing the murder of Mike Bernos and his statement he gave back in the late 90s.
This is Kimberly. I'm with Timothy Marshall. It's December the 12th, 2018, 10:26, and we're discussing the murder case of Mike Bernos and his statement and his testimony. Okay. Go ahead and start from where,
ask me
what
questions.
happened?
Just ask me what you want to know.
Okay. What happened when the police came and got you and took you and questioned you?
They took us over to the courthouse in a little room, and this girl come in there, blonde-headed lady, I can't never think of her name. What's her name? The investigator woman. Mm-hmm. She comes in there and she asks us questions about the case, this and that, blasé, blasé. If we heard this, if we heard that, blasé, blasé, and so we were so young and gullible, we fell right for it, and all that shit. She just, how you say it? I won't say that, but coerced us into saying what they wanted us to say, and that's the way it went the whole time. And all of it was lies. It wasn't. All it was a bunch of bullshit. We were scared, trying to get out of trouble, and whatever they told us is what we said. Pretty much the way it went down.
Right. So, after she got your statement and stuff like that, did you see her anymore?
Oh yeah, she made house visits, all that. Well, they was just lovely, as lovely as they could be. She was anyway.
Yeah. So, do you remember what it was they were wanting you to say?
Yeah, that we overheard Tony talking about the murder, and that he did it, and that they know he did it, and we should say this, and we should say that, blasé, blasé.
When Kim sent me this audio, I took my headphones off and sat in disbelief. I put them back on, hit play, and listened to the 2-minute and 25-second recording once more. Then again, and again, and again, until finally the realization set in. One recantation I could probably ignore. I shouldn't, but I could. I mean, multiple witnesses over many years and one person recants. Yeah, I could maybe believe that wasn't true. 2 witnesses recanting. Okay, now the story is a little more believable, I think. I mean, what are the odds of something like that happening? I'm a very analytical person. Statistics are a big thing to me. And understanding the statistical probability that 2 witnesses would recant and have very similar stories over 2 decades after the incident in question seems extremely unlikely. But 3 witnesses? Obviously, I can't give you the actual statistics, but common sense would tell me the probability is likely 0 to none.
Okay, so in your statement that you wrote, you were talking about when you're in jail, and you said there was a lady investigator that came and talked to you, I guess her and some police officers, and
yes,
they were
yes,
asking
ma'am.
you about this case. Can you just kind of go over real quick what happened there?
I just buttered us up real good and asked us, about the case, and you know what I mean, kind of a little bit too nice.
Did you know
Yeah,
anything about the case when they came and talked to you?
No, ma'am.
So what did this lady investigator look like? Do you remember?
Yeah, she had blonde hair, kind of like real blondish hair, kind of older lady.
Mm-hmm. What did she tell you her name or anything?
Yes, she did, but it's been so long ago I don't remember it.
Every time I spoke to a witness, I was always hesitant to mention someone by name because I certainly didn't want to ask leading questions. I strive to ask open-ended questions and let the witness speak from their memory, not a memory that I may have helped shape. But hearing about a blonde investigator, I made the assumption that this investigator Timothy was referring to was Bobby Casper, just as Amy had described, so I asked.
Was her name Bobby Casper? Does that sound familiar?
It may have been, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
May have been.
How did she identify herself? Just that she was a private investigator, or did you think that she was working with the state, or how did that go?
I thought she was working. I thought she was like a police investigator is what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember who the other people that she came with were?
There was a black fella, and that's just her and that black fella, only because I remember.
Was he with, you were at Chilton County at this time, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he a Chilton County police officer, or he was not a uniformed officer?
He wore a suit.
He wore a suit, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
If I showed you a picture of him, do you think you could identify him?
I could identify both of them, yes, ma'am.
In the days following this conversation, Kim met with Timothy again to see if he could identify the investigator in question. I didn't have a photo of Bobby, but I did have a photo of one of the undercover officers that questioned Tony Quince the night they claimed he confessed to the murder of Mike Bernas. This investigator was Cedric Anderson, and he was working with the Chilton County Police Department at the time. Anderson has since climbed the ladder to obtain the title of Chief of Police for the Auburn Police Department, so his photo was easily accessible on the City of Auburn's website. I downloaded this photo of Anderson as well as 2 other random photos of male African American police officers that I found through a simple Google search. In all 3 photos, the officers were in uniform in front of an American flag. I sent all 3 photos to Kim and asked her to show them to Timothy, although I did not tell Kim which picture was of which person. From the 3 photos I sent, Timothy Marshall selected the photo of Cedric Anderson as one of the officers who had visited him at the Chilton County Jail and questioned him about the Bernas murder.
So when they asked you about all this, I mean, did they straight up come out and ask you to tell a story that you told, or, I mean, were you threatened, or, you get what I'm saying? Like, why did you agree to tell a story that wasn't true?
Because we was just young and didn't know no better, and they, I don't know, it's so hard to explain. They, I don't know, it's kind of like they just planted seeds in our head and they just kind of go with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Promise, but, I don't know. We were just so young and gullible.
Do you remember when you were questioned about your statement at the trial and you said something about you don't know how that got in there? You said, I don't know how that got in there, but I didn't write that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a lot of that stuff I didn't say.
Like,
but they had it in there,
what?
though. Just that Tony told us that he killed somebody and this and blase, and all that. I'm like, whoa, no, I didn't say all that,
So you didn't know, did you know Daniel Bland at all?
Nope, didn't know him at all.
But you knew Tony?
I just know Tony from, just in the county jail, something like that. I didn't know him from the streets, no ma'am.
Timothy told me Bobby came to visit him several times after their initial encounter when he signed his witness statement. Just like with Amy's story, Timothy claimed Bobby came to his home and would bring him food on occasion. He described her as a motherly figure and said Bobby made him feel like she cared for him, so it became easier to open up to her. If you're skeptical about Timothy's statements during this call, what would you think if I told you that Kim and I were not the only people he had told the story to? In June of 2019, I had been in contact with the Georgia Innocence Project, who was representing Tony Quince on an appeal. There is no Alabama Innocence Project chapter, so the Georgia Innocence Project, otherwise referred to as the GIP, had agreed to take on Tony's case. The GIP had reviewed the initial season of Skeptical and had corresponded with Tony's new attorney, Matthew Bailey, to provide additional documentation about the case, including an affidavit from Timothy Marshall. Here's some audio from a call between Christina Bland and myself, where we talked about this documentation I had just received.
So guess what?
What?
So these documents that I got from the Georgia Innocence Project, did you know that Timothy Marshall gave a statement back to the GIP back in 2012, basically saying the exact same thing he told me?
Are you kidding me?
No. No. So I'm going to read it to you. This is dated December 19th of 2012. He gave it to Alyssa Jones, who was Tony's attorney from the Georgia Innocence Project at the time.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Timothy Dale Marshall, and I was asked to testify at Tony's trial by a female investigator that came to see us a lot at the county jail. She would bring us food and cigarettes. We were young and really didn't know better, so we were kind of scared that if we didn't follow along, they would mess us up too. She would come and you could say, prep us on the case and what they wanted. It was really weird. When she would pop up, she would be like, I know you heard this, I know you heard that, so that's how my statement got wrote. By the way, they acted like they wanted Tony bad. I didn't know if Tony was guilty or not. I never understood the effects my testimony would have on Tony's trial. We never thought anybody would believe us. Now that I look back, I can't believe they even wanted anything from us. After the trial, they said they were going to get me for perjury because they didn't read my statement at the trial. After the trial, they said they were going to get me for perjury because when they read my statement at the trial, I'm like, I didn't say that or that. It was really scary, so that's it. Tony never told me he killed anybody, and I never heard him tell Butch that he killed anybody either. Like I said, they, the investigators, in their own way, gave us info for our statements, leading us to say what they wanted. Tony never talked about his case or told Butch anything about a robbery, crack, or a murder. We were young and didn't know any better. That's the end of the statement.
Okay, wait a minute. They said they were going to get him for perjury. Remember, he was the one, wasn't he, that at the trial he was saying, I didn't say that, and they went off the record?
Yeah, he said, I don't know how they got my statement, but I didn't say that.
And then when they came back, they said, just state what was in your statement.
Yeah. And this is exactly what he told Kim and exactly what he told me when I talked to him. And this was all the way back in 2012.
If I was to create two lists of witnesses, specifically regarding recantations, where one list was plausible and the other was sketchy, I'd certainly place Marshall's testimony on the plausible list. But even though I had the information from Timothy and Amy, both of whom I had spoken with personally to confirm the information, I didn't want to jump to conclusions and assume Bobby Casper's actions were nefarious. I didn't know much about Bobby personally, except that she was a private investigator. I heard from a local that Bobby had worked for the FBI, a sentiment that was echoed by a member of the Bernas family, and therefore wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt as I would for any law enforcement agent or former law enforcement agent. And even though Bobby wasn't a law enforcement agent anymore, if she ever had been, she was obviously well respected in those circles since she was coordinating with ABI agents to gather witness statements. I found a few numbers that I believed could be Bobby's, so I started down the list and began dialing a few of them. I wanted to ask her about the statements and get her side of the story, but it didn't exactly go as planned.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I'm looking for Bobby Casper. Do I have the right number?
Yes, you do. This is she.
Oh, okay, great. Bobby, my name is Neeli Faulkner. I'm a podcast journalist.
I'm not having one thing to say to you. Don't you ever call me again.
Can you tell me why, though? Hello?
I let out a sigh as I set my phone down on the counter, feeling pretty defeated. But not for the reason you may think. I just couldn't wrap my head around why those responsible for the conviction of Daniel and Tony were so unwilling to speak about the case. I had hoped that the story wouldn't be one-sided on my part, but it was beginning to get even more difficult to see a narrative that didn't point to Daniel's innocence. Did I, in my first ever case investigation reviewing a claim of innocence, really just stumble on information that suggested this man really was innocent? Did it really just fall in my lap like that, or was I seeing it all from a wrong perspective? Bobby was the key to answering that question, but it looked like the answer would remain a mystery.
What is your take of all of it? Like what?
My take is that they was scratching for anything they could get, and they used a bunch of kids, and we scared, didn't know no better, and we just went right along with that stuff, thinking that we was going to get help. And I don't know what I was thinking at that time.
Yeah.
But I know one thing. Tony ain't told us nothing about he killed nobody, nothing like that. The statements that we wrote were completely false. It was a bunch of bullshit. That's all it was. Now, I don't know, if Tony killed the man or not. You know what I mean? I don't know nothing about that, but I know all our testimonies, they prepped us for it and buttered us up.
Now,
So
you keep saying, referring to like you all, like you as a group of people. Who are you referring to when you say that?
Me, Butch, and Jerry Wayne.
Butch Gibbs and Jerry Wayne Wilson were two names I had become familiar with during my review of the case, but I hadn't yet been able to reach either one of them to question them about their testimony. I knew each of these men had both been incarcerated at the same time as Timothy Marshall, and they all three shared a cell together. But then it clicked. If Timothy Marshall was telling me this story, what about Butch and Jerry Wayne? What would they say? Next week on Skeptical.
I mean, did she specifically ask you to say that this is the story that happened?
Basically, yes, ma'am.
He was not even supposed to be in Coosa County. He said he was over there for 11 months and didn't even have a charge in Coosa County. And I said, for this right here, for testifying in the Barnos murder trial, he said yes. Whenever he got back, that Bobby acted like she was really mad at him and said, now you're going to have to do this and this and this.
I feel intimidated all the time. I mean, when you arrest someone in Tennessee at your home and fly them back in a private jet and land in a cornfield in Rockford, I didn't know anything. I was scared. I was scared shitless.
Skeptical is a production of Murder Creek Media. It's created, written, and narrated by me. Our associate producers are Emily Christie, Tony Forbes, Camry Council, Lauren Powell, and Chantrice Martin. Special thanks to Bailey Dollar and Clarissa Rambo. You can find out more about us and our work by visiting murdercreekmedia.com. If you're hungry for more, consider joining our premium subscription on Spotify. Unlock exclusive access to unaired content, including extended audio interviews and host commentary, offering a deeper dive into the cases that grip your curiosity. You can also join the conversation online by searching our social handle, SkepticalPod. If you like this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Leaving a review helps us grow and improve, making sure we can continue to bring you the content you crave. Every rating, comment, and share helps others discover our show. Remember, every voice matters in the pursuit of justice. Keep questioning, keep advocating, and together we can make a difference.